everyone, this is Danielle, also known as Gently Smiling Jaws, and welcome to my Flosstube for February of 2026. I'm pretty excited for this one because I actually have a couple finishes to show, and if you've been following me, you know that a finish, let alone multiple finishes, does not happen very often at all. And like I usually do, I wanted to start off about the tea that I am drinking. The tea that I'm drinking today is White Hibiscus Passion from Cured Leaves Tea. The description says, white tea with natural soft floral character blended with hibiscus fruit and flavors of peach. And this is, I do have another one of their teas here. Here's the, for this. I don't remember if they have changed their packaging at all since this. The other one that I have is Moto Moto, which is hand-picked smoked black specialty tea, smoky, aromatic, and sweet. And there's that packaging. I first heard about this company when they were at the Northwest Tea Festival a few years back. They were there, and it was the first time, I was introduced to them. And then I think there was some years where they were there and some years where they weren't, because they're over on the East Coast, so that's a long trek to make. And I think because they were coming from the East Coast, they didn't necessarily have a whole lot of tea with them to sell. And there was one tea that I had tried at one of the festivals, and I don't remember the name of it, but it did have currant as part of it, and I quite liked it. And I think that maybe they had run out of that one and didn't have it available to sell, or for some reason I didn't pick it up, and I haven't yet made an order direct from them to be able to get that tea, because I have so much tea. I don't really need new tea, but maybe eventually I will get it from them. And part of the reason I wanted to drink stuff from this tea company is that they are a black-owned company, and their teas are sourced from Africa. If you're familiar with tea, there's a number of tea growing regions, obviously China being a big one, India, Taiwan, and Africa. And different types of teas produced in different places, but they source their teas from Africa. I thought I also remember at one point them mentioning that it was also a veteran-owned company. I did a quick look on their website before filming this video, and I didn't see, at least it wasn't mentioned prominently, that they were, veteran-owned, black-owned company, but that is what I remember from when they were at the tea festival, because I think the owners were there and the ones that were manning the booth. So maybe a tea company you would like to give a try. Let's see. What else? There's a few other things that I want to mention before I get into my cross stitching. And like always, I put chapters on my videos, so if you don't want to listen to me here and you want to jump ahead, you can, but there are things that I think are worth talking about that are here first. First, I wanted to mention, these are some things I had sort of wanted to mention in my last video, but I forgot because it was a whip parade and I had a lot I was trying to organize for that. First off is that Shaded Stitchery has a Patreon that's relatively new. I think it started within the last couple months. I didn't sign up immediately, but I am signed up. And that's something that I think is going to be a worthwhile Patreon to be part of. Shaded Stitchery is also in, we're in the midst of the sale for Data Portraits in Paris, part 2. And I signed up for that, but sort of in the spirit of me not wanting to be pressured by sales, as well as the fact that I had another Shaded Stitchery piece in the works, which you will be seeing soon. I have not started that stitch along. And last year, when this was first announced, it was sort of in my mind that, I could finish the first one, which I own the pattern of, before the sale starts. And of course, that didn't happen. So do I intend to stitch, this pattern eventually? Yes, I do, but for right now, I am living vicariously through the people who are working on it now, and it's been interesting to see in the couple weeks that the drops have been going on how, the pattern is coming to life. Um, Other thing I wanted to mention is another cross stitch designer. I own a number of her patterns. I haven't actually stitched one at this point, but Stitchy Princess, I think she's under Stitchy Princess on Etsy. I think her Instagram is Stitchy Princess Black. She is a Ukrainian cross stitch designer, and if you follow her, you'll know that obviously with the war going on there, that she's been having a rough time of it. So if you have some funds to spare and are looking for some cross stitch patterns, check hers out, because she could certainly use the support right now. Something sort of adjacent to cross stitch stuff that I wanted to mention. Let me take a sip of tea here. Although I've done a tiny bit of designing for, patterns mostly for myself, I am certainly not one of the large, talented cross stitch designers out there. So I won't be doing for this, but a suggestion to those of you who are cross stitch designers, because I've seen people that do either freebie patterns with all of the wonderful things going on in the US right now. This has been going on since last year. There's a number of things. In fact, when I did my No Kings in America pattern, who I am blanking who did this. I will mention it down in the description. Mine, I had added the Node Kings in tiny letters, but Drag Kings in America, which was the suggestion of my friend Jen. But obviously there are designers who do freebie patterns. There are designers who do charity patterns where you have to have given a donation to whether it's one charity or your choice of a few charities, and submit proof that you've donated in order to get the pattern. I wanted to mention something else that I have not seen in as far as cross stitch yet, but I have seen used one other time that may be of interest. There was a small, indie perfumer here locally who I never purchased from myself, because although I find perfume intriguing, I don't wear it enough for it to be a priority when it comes to my expenses, and so I never had the opportunity to, go through with making a purchase from this perfumer, Filigree and Shadow, and currently is in the process of moving overseas, and I don't know when his perfume shop will be open again. But and I will link to this down below, because I had dug up the blog post that I had come across some time ago. But back when Roe versus Wade was overturned here in the US, there was a period of time where if you tried to purchase from his shop, if you were in the US and you did not submit proof to him that you had contacted your elected officials to, object to the fact of what was going on in the country, he would cancel your order, refund your money. It did not matter that you had paid him, that money would be refunded to you and you would not be able to order. And when I came across that, I was sort of shocked that somebody would be willing to take that strong of a stance, that if you had not what he considered to be doing your part to object to this, you were not allowed to order his products. And I don't know what the window, was for that. And I understand that, adds an extra layer of complexity to things when you have to sort of vet each order and make sure that, the person has complied with your rules. But that's something that would be interesting to see, maybe not, applied on that wide reaching of a scale, because, everybody is, whether this is something somebody is doing as a hobby, or they are trying to make their living from it, it may not be realistic for them to, do this to their entire revenue stream. But what if it was just like a pattern, and either you couldn't buy that particular pattern, or it was a freebie that in order for you to get it, you had to send proof that you had contacted your elected officials if you were someone here in the US. I think that would be an interesting thing, because obviously, not everybody is able to donate or donate as much as they would like, but you are certainly able to contact your officials, whether that is an email or a call or sending, a letter or a postcard in the mail. So I don't know how that would logistically work. I am not in a position to, design some wonderful pattern that everybody would want where I could try this out myself. But I am just throwing that out into the universe where maybe somebody or multiple people would like to take this idea and run with it. It could be an interesting thing. Let's see, more tea here. Let's see. Other thing, before I get to my cross stitching, is I just wanted to say thank you for the response to my whip parade. Obviously, a small channel. I don't necessarily want to be a big channel, but I know that the whip parades get more eyes on them than my regular videos do. And that's why I felt it was important to start off, the video saying clearly, fuck ice, because in the fiber arts community, like a lot of more, traditional hobbies, there are a lot of, more conservative views, and I didn't want to be lumped into that. And if I sit here and, don't say anything on a video that's going to get more views, even if I have mentioned things along those lines in older videos, I don't want, anyone is welcome to watch, but I don't want you watching or subscribing under the assumption that those are my beliefs because this is a hobby I participate in. So, thank you for the folks who joined. There were a few people, who left, and there were a couple very, very mild comments that weren't happy, mostly with my use of language, saying fuck, which I don't make it a habit to curse in my videos, but if that's what you have the biggest problem with, I don't feel like you have your priorities in the right place, and my channel is not for you. So, all right, a little bit more tea, and then finally onto the cross stitching. All right, first up is a finish. I have finished All Treats, No Tricks by the Witchy Stitcher. Since my last video, let's bring that up here, I put in 1,478 stitches to finish it off. And let me, oh, you know what I didn't do? And I will do this right here. Let me set this down. I've been using, here's my notes for this Flosstube. I've been using my Hobonichi weeks that I am keeping track of my cross stitching in, and I have the little cards that I've started, and I realized I didn't put a finish date on this, and I may not have put a finish on the other ones as well. Let me go back. So I finished All Treats, No Tricks on, this was February 6th of 2026. And I started it on August 28th of 2023. And I used all the items. I bought this in a kit format. And so I used all the items from the kit, which the fabric was noted as Fossil by Fox and Rabbit, a 28 count linen, stitched it 2/2, and the floss were all Cottage Garden threads that were kind of specially done for this kit. So let me this up again. And I started on this, quite some time ago, and then I got a certain ways in. I think when I pulled this back out, I think I had done, how much had I done of this? Maybe I had I done this fellow over here? The middle cat, and then these flowers down here, and so doing, I think it was this figure and the border was what I had to do to finish it. And this is a count of fabric that, you know, is not something I really reach for these days, and I had this sitting out in my whips for so long. Let me look and see, because I have my list. I'm really glad I made a list of all my whips when I did the whip parade, because now I am noting, I have them in chronological order here in this notebook, and then I am also marking off when I work on a whip for the first time during the year, because I don't know if I'm going to do the thing that people try to do where they try to touch all their whips during the course of a year, but I am marking them off so at least I know which ones I have and haven't, and we'll see how the year goes. Maybe I will try and get myself to go through all of them, but maybe not. It's just more sort of like a, you know, thing of interest to me. So this had been my 5th oldest whip, and now it is finished. So this, after Joe Bakken, was my 2nd finish of the year, and I was very happy because I was ready to get this out of my whips. I knew I didn't have a ton to do to get it done, and it was time to get it knocked off the list, and I am glad I was able to do that. All right, next up, and this is sort of far from perfect, but I'm trying to, since these are finishes, make them look a little neater on the board here before showing them. I had started working on, just hold that there, on Freedom Motif Sampler by Shaded Stitchery. I wanted to work on it for Black History Month, and then when I realized that I, you know, really didn't have all that much left to do on it, I pushed ahead. There were other things I had sort of had on my list for February, but once I got going on this, I was like, I'm going to finish this. I am close enough. I can do it. And I pushed forward and put in the last 3,101 stitches and got it done. This was one of the very first Shaded Stitchery patterns that I bought. I think the colors are beautiful. I just thought it was very eye-catching. Obviously a lot of symbolism in there, some of which I know, some of which I don't. I believe that I think Nuri had some Instagram posts quite a while back where she went over some of the symbolism, but not all of it on there. But I bought this and the first Data Portraits in Paris pattern at the same time, and I had intended to do the Data Portraits in Paris one first because that one was smaller. I figured I would do that, but I kept looking at this one, and this is the one I ultimately went with. So I am glad that I did, and I am glad that I was able to get this finished. I have a feeling I did not mark on my card when this one was finished, so let me pull this out and then also give you the details on it. I did not note that, so let me go back and make a note here, which I should know. I just finished this yesterday. I don't know why I'm looking back for the date, but this was started on May 18th of 2024, and I finished this on February 15th, 2026. The fabric is 40 count Duxbury linen from Fox and Rabbit. As I've mentioned before, this is a fabric where I have a little piece that has like the little flecks and modeling on it, and that's why I had purchased a larger piece, kind of looking for that. when this piece arrived, I was somewhat, disappointed that it didn't have that look, and sort of set it aside. But then once I decided to start this pattern, I was looking through what I had on hand and saw this and thought, this is actually perfect for this. So I am very happy that I got this fabric, even if I wasn't thrilled upon arrival. It is perfect for this project. And the floss is everything that's called for, except I had to substitute Classic Colorworks Vanilla Custard for I think that's Classic. Is that Classic Colorworks or oh no, maybe that's Color and Cotton, for Color and Cotton Almond. I think when I was ordering these flosses, wherever I was ordering it from, had everything except for that particular color, so I just made a substitution when I placed my order. But just the colors jump out. I love the water up there, and I think one of the things that I really loved about the water is that if you look at the model on the pattern, that the way that the water is stitched, because there's a bit of variegation to the floss, the way it's stitched really has a look of movement to it. And I tried to do that with mine. I was not as successful as the model, but I think it does, there's some bit of it, because I was trying to stitch kind of like that, so you would kind of get the flow there. And I think mine is a bit too linear, because I wasn't if you look at the model, you will see more that it seems to be very intentionally stitched in a way that had kind of the curving water movement. But hey, at least I got something kind of like it there. So this will be added to my list of many things to get framed eventually. I am not good at fully finishing things, but eventually I will get this in a frame. Let me get this back in here, and on to the next. All right, so next up, this has a bit of a story to it here. So as you saw in my whip parade, I had this little start of Al Forrest Embroideries Alice in Wonderland, the tricolor version. I have a headless Queen of Hearts there in the middle of this fabric. And I was struggling because I use Pattern Keeper so much, and I had not been able to get the pattern into Pattern Keeper in a way that worked for me. But I had someone who was willing to help me, and that sort of invigorated me to get back to this again. So thank you very much to that person. And after doing that, since I have done so little, I wanted to revisit the idea of restarting it. And that is what I did. Now, I originally started this back on September 5th of 2023. And it was, these are the Al Forrest flosses, and I used the fabric that was in the kit, which I think is a 32 count. I don't know exactly what the fabric is. It sort of makes me think of a French country mocha. But it just, I was doing it because it was what was in the kit, but particularly if I was going to restart it, I wanted to do something that was more in line with how I'm stitching things now. Now, my first thought, particularly because I had seen that Bestitch Me had some, ready to ship fabrics available. And when I was going through my whip parade, I had said that This is the from Yalda to Nowruz that I started on this Lunar Gray from Bestitch Me. Now, I had said if I restarted the Alice in Wonderland that this was a fabric I was considering. And I saw that, you know, Bestitch Me had some more ready-to-ship fabric, so I'm like, okay, I gotta check the flosses against this because maybe I just need to order a piece and get started. However, when I held the flosses up to this fabric, and I realized kind of that this kind of charcoal black color here has some brownish tones in it. I'll hold it up here. I wasn't kind of thrilled how the floss looked with this fabric. This had been what I was going to use, and then after I saw that, I'm like, well, maybe that's not the right choice after all. So I dug around through what I had on hand because I thought, well, if I'm not going to, you know, if that's not the right floss to use, that's not the right fabric to use, the first thing I'm going to do is dig around through what I have on hand and try not to, you know, spend money when I have stuff around that I could potentially use. So I ended up finding a 46 count raw Bristol linen. And when I had the flosses with that, I was happy with how that looked. So just yesterday, last night, after finishing Freedom Motif Sampler, I got 197 stitches in on this. Just, you know, a little start just to make sure I liked how this looked. At first I thought maybe the lightest color wasn't standing out enough, but now as I'm dropping this, I think it's okay. And I've got multiple needles going there with floss, but let's bring it up. See the teeny tiny start, just so you can see that there. So I did a top middle start. So that up at the very top is the top of just the very top border. Those wispy things there is the steam coming up from the teapot. So not starting with the Queen of Hearts this time. I was wanting to start from the top edge so that I could kind of position things on this piece of fabric in a way that, you know, sort of made sense. So I don't know how much I'm going to work on this. Maybe I will work on it a bit more this month because, you know, there are hearts involved in it and it's February. But, you know, this is a long-term project, so I'm not looking at finishing it anytime soon. I forget like how many thousands of stitches are in this. But I am happier with this than with the last fabric, and I think that now I can start to make some slow but steady progress. So a little start, which, you know, doesn't really count as a full-on start because it's a restart, but there is some progress there. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this other fabric that I've started because, you know, maybe I could finish the queen and use it as just like a little small finish, except it is dead center on that piece of fabric because I did a center start on that piece of fabric because I had read somewhere that the pieces of fabric with the Alforest kits were not super generous on the margin, and so I wanted to do a center start just to make sure I didn't run into a situation of being too close to one of the edges. But I don't know. We'll see. That's a problem for future me to worry about. And finally, just this morning, and I will move these threads out of the way because once again I have multiple needles going. I pulled the heart sampler back out again, and I had intended to work on this more than I have so far this month, and because of the way the days fall this month, I am recording this a little earlier than I normally would, so I haven't had as many stitching days. But because I had intended to stitch on this on Valentine's Day, but I got going, so much on Freedom Motif Sampler, and that became my I have to finish this one thing. So I was just all in on that until it was done. But I wanted to make sure I got some work in on this month. So this morning, actually, I sat down and put in 318 stitches, and I will pull out the information on this because I'm using a kind of my own color conversion on this because of the fabric I decided to use. I started this on Valentine's Day last year, so Valentine's Day of 2025. Pattern is by Bad Vibes Only. That's on Etsy. This fabric is a 46 count strawberry shortcake linen from Bestitch Me, and I think this was towards the fall, late fall, maybe it was like November 2024. I had decided I wanted to stitch this and start it on Valentine's Day last year. So when I was trying to decide on what fabric to use, I ordered a selection of kind of pinks, reds from Bestitch Me, and they weren't ready to ship, so I ordered well enough in advance so that I would have them in time for Valentine's Day. And I looked through the fabrics and ultimately decided to go with this, which is more, it's sort of like a pinkish reddish. And so instead of using the colors that were in the pattern, I'm using silks from Silks for You, PR194, PR141, CM001, PR006, and DMC Ecru. And what I did on this morning is I finished up this color here on the rib cage area on this side, filled in the heart, and I'm now in the process of filling in the bones with the ecru. So obviously I have a long ways to go, but this has sat untouched for quite some time, so I was happy to get some work done on this. And I think I'll try and get some more in. It would be nice if I could finish filling in the bones of the rib cage and just sort of then have that section done before moving on. And that means that for between my last Flosstube and this Flosstube, I stitched 5,094 stitches, which I haven't been fully keeping track what I've been doing, each month, but that seems pretty good compared to, how much I've been doing recently when I've been, sort of in a slump and not, super excited about cross stitching. So I feel like overall this is been a pretty productive month. And here's the Silks for You and the one DMC here. So yeah, more of a pink reddish, but then red, but I am happy with how this is turning out. Okay, let me set those down and grab some more tea. Okay, plans. Next up on my list, because I'm in this mode of trying to move things off my WIP list and pare things down, my next thing to focus on is my temperature chart. And I had, kind of hoped to have it done by now, so that, because I did it with a snake based on a snake that I had because, you know, Year of the Snake, and now we are moving it into Year of the Horse. By the time this is posted, we're already in Year of the Horse. And so I had sort of hoped to have it done by then. But I got focused on Freedom Motif Sampler, which I don't regret at all because I'm happy to have that finished. But that one, I'm sort of going to bump up to my next priority as far as getting a finish on something. I don't know that I'm going to be able to finish that one up before February is out, but I'm hoping by the time I do my next video, I will have that done. I don't make any promises on things because I'm trying not to hold myself to certain, you know, deadlines and taking the fun out of cross stitching, but the finishes I have done so far this year have motivated me, and so now I'm looking at things and I'm like, I want to finish this, I want to finish that. Because right now, well, let me look here at my list. I have had 3 finishes so far this year, which means at the beginning of January, I had 35 whips. One of those I finished before I did my whip parade, and I showed that finish in my whip parade. So now that means I'm down to 32 whips. I would like to get that number down even more. I don't have a goal number I'm trying to reach or anything, but just I think having a smaller number of whips overall where I can kind of touch everything more often is something that will sort of make me happier, I think. We'll see. But yeah, getting my temperature chart knocked out is kind of my next priority. The other thing I was going to say is that I had been looking forward to the Year of the Snake for a long time because although I'm not somebody who was born in the Year of the Snake, I like snakes, and I think, okay, Year of the Snake, that means there's going to be all sorts of Year of the Snake stuff, cool snake stuff for me to get and sort of add to my, you know, little collection of snake things. The thing is that I'm pretty picky when it comes to snake items. If they don't look how I like, I'm not going to get it just because it's a snake if I don't think it's a cool looking snake. And I think that, you know, snakes aren't going to be high on the list of animals that people who aren't either into snakes or born in the Year of the Snake, it's not something, you know, your average person is just going to want to get. And, you know, to be fair, I didn't put a ton of effort into searching, but particularly at the beginning of the Year of the Snake, I did do, you know, searching online. I was trying to find, you know, cool little Year of the Snake stuff, and I just wasn't finding anything that excited me. So, you know, it was sort of a wah-wah. And I guess that I'll have to just look forward to, it looks like the next Year of the Snake is going to be in 2037, and it will be the year of the fire snake, and maybe we'll get some cool snake stuff then. Okay. I think I already mentioned about how I wanted to work more on the Heart Sampler and more on the Alice in Wonderland before the month is up, try and make a little progress on both of those before we're into March. And then, you know, like I said before, after I get the temperature chart done, I'm going to, you know, go through and pick something else that doesn't have that much left to focus on. I don't necessarily know that I'm going to pick something and work on it until it's finished, you know, each time, but there are certain things that I definitely, you know, that's kind of sort of the goal, to knock more things off the list, and so pick something and focus on it. And I guess if I don't finish it, making a big, you know, chunk of progress on it, where maybe, you know, I make some progress and then it's still early enough on in the year that if I don't finish it kind of in that go, that maybe a few months down the road, I go back to it again, make another big push, and I'm able to finish before, you know, at the end of the year. Well, we'll see. I guess the last thing to touch on is market. The Nashville Needlework Market. I've been kind of vaguely paying attention to, the announcements of patterns that are going to come out at market. And last year I bought, I hadn't intended to buy anything. Then eventually I ended up, placing a, sizable order for things. And I think that there is only one thing that I got at market last year that I have actually started, which is Disagree, which I'm a good ways into, but I'm not, finished yet. And knowing that, and knowing that I very much prefer working from PDFs, that although I reserve the right to change my mind, I am planning to sit out on doing any orders for market. Yeah, just because I feel like I've had a good start to the year with focusing on stuff I already have, where I don't feel a need. I'm not seeing anything where I'm like, oh, I need to get that and start that right now. There's definitely some cool things that I've seen, but I'm sort of filing that away for, oh, down the road, maybe I'll get that as a PDF and start that someday. But there's no rush. I know that there's the X-Stitch the Rainbow, what is it, the under the Waves or Under the Sea, whatever their theme is this year. There's, a lot of interesting patterns, but I got a number of patterns for last year's one and got the floss. I have the fabric I was going to use, and I haven't started a single one of those patterns yet. So that can wait. And the past year's ones, you can still get those patterns, get the floss, and and there are some of the older ones that I might want to go back to at some point. But considering how I have made no progress on last year's, this year's stuff can wait. I don't need to get it right now, particularly in a paper format where I'm not not very likely to use it. Or with the paper stuff that I have, it's always going to be, I need to take the time to get this into Pattern Keeper before I start. And yeah, so that's not going to be high on my list to do right now. But if you are going to order any patterns from market, if you don't have a local needle workshop to order through, I would recommend going through the Top Knot Stitcher shop and purchasing through Abby, because that was who I ordered through last year. Everything was great, and I know other people say great things, so that is the shop I would recommend if you don't have a shop already that you like to work with. I will say that the one pattern that I have seen going through that was sort of an immediate, oh, that's something I would like to get, someday, was the wildflower stitching pattern, The Power of the People. It has an American flag on it, which I am not usually stitching anything patriotic, but this one says, it's a flag, and it says on it, the power of the people is greater than the people in power. And I thought, I know that there are patterns that have come out because it's the 250th, anniversary of the United States. And there are people who are into celebrating that, and I'm not particularly excited or really care about it, particularly now. But if I were to start a pattern in celebration on like the 4th of July, it would be that pattern. I don't know that I'm going to do that, but in my mind, if I'm going to do a 4th of July start, that will be it. And I think that is all that I really wanted to say. But yeah, just to talk a little bit more about my weeks here, this is the list of whips that I have in my weeks from when I did my whip parade. I listed down everything in chronological order because I was able to go back through my weeks from previous years and, be able to find out when I started all this stuff, because I'm lucky in that I pretty much started taking notes on my cross stitch from when I first began back in 2022. So I finally have a chronological list of my whips all there. I'm going to have a list of any starts, which the only thing I have there, which kind of sort of counts, is the restart of Alice in Wonderland. So I've noted that as a restart. And then I also have a section for finishes, which was going to be my notes on my whip parade, but I ended up not writing down any notes for that. And so I just have my finishes and when they were finished. So Joel Bakken, I finished on January 10th, All Treats No Tricks on February 6th, and Freedom Motif Sampler on February 15th. So I just sort of have a running list, and then going back to my whip list, I am doing a little dot next to the ones where I work on them that year, well, during the course of this year, and then putting a check mark next to the ones that then have been finished. So at a glance, I can kind of see what I've been doing over the course of the year and why I didn't do this in previous years. I don't know. And I also think that going with the mega weeks was a good choice. I don't know that I really am going to need all the pages that are in the mega weeks, but in the past I had a separate notebook where I was putting my Flosstube notes, but this year I am just putting the notes in the back of the weeks for my Flosstubes, and I went with the mega just to make sure that I didn't want to feel like I was going to run out of pages. So this is probably way more than I need, but I think it is very helpful to have both the notes for the stitching that I have done, you know, during the week next to, you know, in the same booklet. So I will write, you know, kind of what I work on each day. I am mostly stitching on weekends right now, just because my stitching is, you know, slowed down, and then any notes or other things I can put on the other side. So I'm not always writing notes in there, but it is nice to have that space. So I have been, I've been happy with how the weeks has been working out. And then, you know, I had started using a weeks a number of years back when I was taking some classes, and I was using weeks to keep track of my, you know, stuff for those classes and when things were due. And then when I finished with those classes, and after that I started cross stitching, so then I used the rest of that weeks to keep track of cross stitching. And I was using the one that was, you know, for whatever, you know, the zodiac animal of the year it was. So I don't know if the first one I did was Year of the Tiger, but I've just since then, for my, you know, cross stitch related stuff, I have just continued on with using the ones with the animal for that year. So obviously this year being Year of the Horse, this is what I've got. So obviously, you know, so many ways to keep track of stitching. I know there are some people who, you know, love Notion, and part of me, I have Notion. I have, you know, the stuff that we'll use. I just haven't sat down to use Notion. I sort of like how, you know, it would be able to calculate certain things and keep track of all the data, but I don't know, part of me just enjoys the analog, you know, writing down this. So that's what I've been doing since it works for me. So, all right. Well, time to wrap this up. It looks like it's going to be close to an hour. I'm sure there's a little bit of stuff to edit out. So this is looking at an hour-ish for this one, which is not too bad. So, thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in March. Bye.